Hey y'all, Data Guy here, together with the Data Dog. And today, what we're going to be going through is how to use the new Apache or the new Couchbase provider for Apache Airflow to perform an ETL operation with the idea of bringing data that we're just going to randomly generate, transforming it, standardizing it before uploading it into a Couchbase database. And if you're not familiar with Couchbase, it's kind of a competitor, I would say, to MongoDB. It's a NoSQL database, so useful for analytical workloads where you have unstandard data coming from a bunch of different sources, multi-threading, really centered around horizontal scaling, similar to how Mongo is, and really centered around also powering business critical applications and analytic workloads. So what I'm going to do today is set up an Airflow environment, show you how to get Couchbase and the new provider installed on it, and then show you how you can interact with that Couchbase provider in a pretty typical ETL fashion, show you how you can ingest data into Couchbase after doing some transformations and normalization on it. So without further ado, I'll stop blabbering and we can get into the fun part. And the first thing we're going to need to do is just create a new Airflow environment for this. So we'll cd into desktop, data guy video repos, and then we're going to make a new directory, Couchbase Airflow, and then cd into there. And then we're going to run astro dev init and use the astro CLI to create a just Airflow environment running on Docker on my local machine, and then open this new folder up within VS Code. So go to data guy repos. Awesome. So now we have a fresh install of Airflow, all Dockerized on my local machine. If you want more information on how this works, check out my other videos on it. But what we're really going to do here first is just go into our requirements.txt file and add a few different Python packages that we're going to need to actually use Couchbase. So first, we're going to have the Couchbase provider, so using the pre-built operators to interact with the Couchbase. Then we're also going to use the Couchbase SDK. And then also optional here, if you want to use Google Cloud Storage or any other cloud storage as kind of an intermediary location for your transformations, the landing pads, you're not storing it on your local machine or on Airflow, best practices, add that here. And then also just the common SQL providers for just writing and running SQL statements on our data. So pretty simple requirements file, and now we've got that all set up, we can go and create our Couchbase DAG. So we'll just call this Couchbase ETL Dopy. And then, so now we're going to start with the best and most creative part of any DAG, and that is bringing in all of our different packages and requirements here. So simple, classic DAG object, task decorators, task group decorators, we're going to do some parallel processing, mimic an enterprise setup. Then also date time, the Couchbase hook for hooking into Couchbase, that official new provider, Couchbase cluster for cluster options, be able to trigger, interact with a Couchbase cluster, which is how it runs its databases, and then insert options as well, so we can have some flexibility in how we're actually going to insert the data into Couchbase. So then, now that we have all of our different packages and requirements set up, we're also, actually I'm going to go back and save this first, we're also going to bring in some default args, so just have one retry after a delay, Couchbase connection ID, Couchbase default, the bucket name that you're going to use is just for that optional cloud storage piece, and then your username and password for whatever your credentials are for interacting with your Couchbase environment. Then, now we have all our variables set and default arguments. We'll then create the DAG definition. So again, nothing really to write home about here, just all standard stuff. Just calling it complex Couchbase ETL DAG. And then our first task here is going to be a task just to generate some data. So here, all we're doing here is just basically simulating a data array of different users. So here I just put in different user IDs, different usernames, emails, and different roles for users. Just kind of simulating some typical like user transaction data or user data that you would be ingesting into Couchbase if you're using it to kind of power your operational part of your business. Then what we're also going to do, and this is where that optional cloud storage part, is simulate just kind of backing up your original data. So in case you want to have just the raw copies of your data as well as the more transformed and clean version, this is a good way to do that, where you can set a backup location for your data, upload it there, and then have in parallel that data also be processing. But you can then, if you ever need to, go back and compare the transformed and processed data to the previously raw data and identify anything that got dropped by accident or any inconsistencies there. Now, the next task we're going to want to perform is actually validating our data. So making sure that our data doesn't have any nulls, and just typical kind of processing checks, so you're not uploading bad data and clogging up your database. So here, validate data, passing in data, and then here we're just going to create an empty array for validated data, get the name and email of each record. And so if there is a record that has a name and email, we're going to use that as a single sources of truth. So if it has a name and email, then we're going to accept it. If it doesn't, then we're going to say no valid records found. And all of those validated records, we're going to iterate through and then append to our new validated array before returning it as an XCOM to be used in our next task. So raw data that we can put down into our transformations. Now that we validated it is good data. Then our next step in the process, and I gave it away there a little bit, is the transformation step. So here we're going to first create a task group, transform data, and I'm just going to put it all in here and then go through it step by step. So here we have our transform data task group. And here we're basically going to be doing parallel transformations on each of the users within that array. So here, transform admin data for each admin data. So here we're just going to simulate different transformations, but bring in the admin data for every role that is an admin. We're going to set that record name to their title. So we just have their title there, so we know that they're an admin, and just assign that as a first thing. These are just kind of fun example transformations that you'd be doing on this data. And then similarly for user data, what we're going to do here is just go through each role in that user data where the role is user, add it to our user data array, and just do a quick transformation where we're just going to transform the name to uppercase. And this is where obviously you'd bring in your own transformations, but I just want to show you how you do the framework to do these kind of parallel processing transactions. And then here, parallel tasks, so admin data equals transform admin data, and user data equals transform user data. And then the task group at the end is actually going to combine the results from both of these tasks and return them as a single value. So showing you a little more advanced Airflow techniques here where you're actually returning a value from a task group. And once you have this combined result of admin and user data that's been transformed properly, we can then start loading it into Couchbase. And we're actually going to do this in chunks. So chunks are number one, great way to make sure that you don't just overload a single Airflow worker trying to upload a massive data set, but also for leveraging Airflow to process data in parallel. So even though I'm only inserting 4 rows here and a trunk size of 2, this is an extreme example on the low end, but when you're dealing with data sets that are thousands, tens of thousands, millions of rows, you're going to need to chunk that up into segments of like 50,000 rows. And this is how you're going to want to do it, is by actually running these all in parallel using dynamic task mapping. So we'll see what that looks like in a second. And then here within the actual task, so what we're going to do is hook into Couchbase, so using the new Couchbase Hook provider. Here we're going to get the cluster that this hook is authenticated to, so passing the username and password that are assigned to a particular cluster. Then we're going to get our bucket and collection objects within Couchbase, so the location where we want to store this data in a bucket, and then within that bucket there will be a sub directory called a collection, which you'll be familiar with if you use Couchbase. Then what we're going to do is for I and range, so each chunk size, for each chunk, we're going to upload that data, and for each individual chunk, basically iterate through that array of data. Again, there's only 2 chunks here, but upload the user ID and the different records around that user into this document ID. So each document will assign to a particular user, so we're using Jinja templating here, and then inserting that record into that document. So each document is going to represent a distinct user within Couchbase, and then just print inserted chunk. And then finally, just returning how many chunks or how many records you've actually inserted into Couchbase in totality. Then the final thing we're going to do is just track some metadata. So this is actually something I recently started to do on DAGs, and this is just basically saying, hey, how long did this task take? So you have a long-term record of how is your processing time looking? What does the record count look like? Are you suddenly dropping record count? This is for more kind of macro scale monitoring, where if you want to just get a high-level view of how your pipeline is performing over time, you could save these records and then kind of visualize them. And then the final piece we're going to have here, just to actually build out the pipeline flow, is define all of our different dependencies. So here, first task is obviously generating the data and backing up that raw data before validating it. And then transformations are going to be split into groups. We're going to create that task group of transform group, pass in validated data into that so it can then be used in both tasks within that task group, and then do that chunk data loading into Couchbase and then perform metadata tracking on all of that upload process. And there you have it. So that is a full Couchbase ETL DAG with Apache Airflow. And that's really all I have for you today. I just wanted to show you how you can build out a DAG that is interacting with the new Couchbase provider. You know, I've worked with the Couchbase team a little bit. They're pretty cool. But really just want to make videos on any new providers that come out. So anyone that's using them, because there's obviously an audience if they made a provider, I hope you found this useful. And I hope, above all else, in the Data Dog, hope you have a great rest of your day. Data Dog and Data Guy out.